Paranormal Life show on YouTube, Into the Fringe, where we discuss lost civilizations, UFOs, cryptids, unsolved mysteries, megalithic structures, extraterrestrials, interdimensional portals, time skips, and more. Don't change that channel, because now you are leaving the mainstream and entering into the fringe.
Welcome, followers. It is I, Cardinal Sin, and welcome to a very special episode of Into the Fringe. And today our guest is Stephen Bassett, who is a political activist, disclosure advocate, and the executive director of the Paradigm Research Group, founded in 1996 to end a government-imposed embargo on the truth behind extraterrestrial-related phenomena. He has spoken to audiences around the world about the implications of disclosure, the formal confirmation by heads of state of an extraterrestrial presence engaging the human race. He has lectured around the world on the political implications of the UAP/ET phenomena and has given over 1,200 radio and television interviews. PRG's advocacy work has been extensively covered by national and international media, including being featured on CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, and in the Washington Post and New York Times. In 2013, PRG organized and conducted a citizens' hearing on disclosure at the National Press Club in Washington. In November of 2014, PRG launched a 2-year political initiative out of Washington, D.C. that injected the ET issue into the 2016 presidential campaign. Bassett has appeared in many documentary films, and his lectures and interviews are well represented on YouTube. Welcome back to Into the Fringe, Stephen Bassett.
It's good to be with you again. But I'd like to start off with this, and I mean no disrespect, sir, I assure you. The UAP issue is no longer the fringe. It's mainstream now.
That's true. It's just the name of the show.
I understand, but it gives me an opportunity to say this, and that is that one of the things that's developed over the last 4 years is finally we've left the what I like to call the intellectual ghetto of ufology, which was created by the government, not by us. And the ridicule has diminished. The number of debunkers that are hardcore debunking diminished. Skeptics kind of scurrying off into the side. It's mainstream now. And I think it's important to acknowledge that. It's as important and as mainstream as all of the other major issues that we're dealing with. It's a little more complicated, a little trickier in some ways, but incredibly important to our world and our future.
Which, believe it or not, is why I asked you on, and thank you for being here on comparatively short notice as opposed to your last appearance. There are things going on in the world that I think that we need to talk about. First, I would just like to jump to the chat and say hello to some folks that are here. Hail, Cosmic Squirrel. Tessa D777, good evening. Antiderivative Jill is here, hello. And of course, Darius Munchausen, hail. So, Steve, let's jump right in. How do you think Russia's war against Ukraine is affecting disclosure, and maybe vice versa?
Yeah, that's jumping right in, all right. There are two ways that the events in Europe intersect with the UAP issue. So let's discuss those two. One of the ways is that it clearly impacts the disclosure process. Now, what is that? The disclosure process, as I use it, capital D disclosure process, is the the unfolding developments that are ultimately leading us to confirmation of the extraterrestrial presence, which has to come from the president or from a head of state. And this process has been going on all the way back to Roswell in its own ways, but really gets going, picks up speed in 2017. So the most intense, rapidly developing period in the 75 years is between late 2017 and now. So we're approaching 5 years, and it's unprecedented developments have taken place. It's been a one milestone after another, and so, as I've said many times, we are heading towards disclosure, confirmation by the president, whether we want it or not, and some don't. I certainly do, and this is a big deal. However, something of this magnitude is going to be impacted by major historical events. This has been true of every major activist movement in history. Things are moving forward, you're making some progress, then all of a sudden suddenly something big takes place, like a World War II, right? Or an assassination. And this last 5 years has been no exception. What is happening now was not supposed to take this long. I believe that the plans that were in place, the people that got involved did not expect that 5 years would go by. We wouldn't have gotten disclosure by then. And it's not hard to figure out why. These are the interesting times that the supposed Chinese curse. There's some controversy there, but the well-known supposed Chinese curse of "May you live in interesting times." These are the times they're talking about. Right? It's the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse is basically what wrote in as of 2017. First of all, so you got war, plague, famine, and death. Okay, famine
don't forget pestilence.
Well, I think
I guess that's
plague. Yeah, pestilence. Yeah. Let me use the correct term: pestilence, plague. So there was already plenty of famine in the world, and that's grown since then. And then we have new episodes of it now. So that horse was already in town. Of course, pestilence showed up, right? And while we're dealing with that, the war horsemen showed up. And that just leaves one more horseman, and that, of course, is death. And if you're thinking, well, what would represent that? And for that, I offer up nuclear war, all right? So these are intense times. So whatever the plans were to finally get to a point where the U.S. president, preferably then to another president, another country, could confirm the ET presence, it has been absolutely savaged by these extraordinary developments. Now, we know about the plague. We know about the pandemic. It's straightforward. It's the worst in human history, period. A recent study, a very good one, which tried to analyze the impact of this virus based upon excessive deaths around the world. And they studied excessive deaths in every country in the world. And this is important because the previous death counts are pretty well known. It's a pretty solid statistic. They keep track of this. And so they showed an extraordinary increase in excessive deaths over this 2-year period. And it was hard to point out any other factor, right, that would contribute to that. What else was going on that could account for these excess deaths? The number they came up with was 30 million, which is 3 times the current, quote, official count, which everybody knew was clearly not the total amount, because there's an awful lot involved in these counts being done properly or being done at all. There's also a number of countries that by and large would prefer not to give out the real figures. And so 30 million may be as close to an accurate assessment of deaths from COVID or co-COVID results, right? Meaning you were not in good shape, but COVID pretty much put you over the line. And I should point out that that 30 million is on top of all of the efforts that we were able to make, the hundreds of billions of dollars, if not trillions of dollars that were spent on trying to contain it, trying to inform the public that the use of extraordinarily advanced new biotechnologies, the creation of vaccines, the implementation of the vaccination program. None of that was available in virtually none of it, in any previous plague or pestilence the human race has ever gone to. I would make the case that if this same virus, and the Omicron has already been identified by a number of scientific studies as the most virulent virus in the history of the human race, meaning its ability to hang around and infect the maximum number of people, that had this virus occurred back in the early 1900s when we had the Spanish flu or previous time, it would have killed not 30 million, but very possibly 500 million. There's hard to come up with a number. That's how bad it is. And we're not getting that because of all this wonderful technology, which some people are not taking advantage of. That's their privilege. But of course, billions have. There's been over 10 billion vaccinations administered. And so we're dealing with the worst plague in history. Obviously, if you're trying to pursue an incredibly significant, complex political agenda, and in comes the worst plague in human history, this is not helpful. And so it has really pushed back the ability to pursue it. Okay? Now, as things started to look better, each time it looked optimistic, we saw some advancement in the disclosure process, capital D, leading to confirmation, a new surge would take place. And recently we went through the fourth surge, and that was the Omicron, which is the variant of COVID, which has been identified as the most virulent virus probably ever that we've dealt with. And guess what? We have a new variant coming on. It is Omicron 2B. Forgive me. It is now the dominant variant, and it has been studied, and it is said to be 80% more virulent than the previous variant, which was the number one most virulent plague or pestilence we've ever seen. So that is now coming into play. It's not clear how bad it's going to be, but the numbers are not encouraging. This is brutal. Okay, fine. But we've been dealing with it for a couple of years. There's a whole lot of measures in place. There's a whole lot of prophylactic measures in place. The ability to ultimately be able to move forward on major political projects is you could see how it could be done. And then, before we could, how would you say, adjust to that development, Vladimir Putin decides that this is his chance as a aging, probably not particularly well, old man of 70, who does look younger than his age, I must say. It's his pretty much last best chance to establish some kind of legacy in his own mind that will outlive him, right? Because once he's dead, all his money is not going to be worth anything to him, though I'm sure it'll be spread nicely amongst his heirs. But that's not a legacy. Nobody cares how rich you were. And he makes an absolutely confounding, inexplicable decision that legacy is going to be him becoming the Stalin of the 21st century. And he sets about to virtually obliterate a country. And the only difference between his effort to obliterate this country as opposed to what Hitler attempted to do in the early stages of his legacy seeking, which to go after and obliterate Poland, is that Putin is far more is less competent than Hitler, which is nothing to brag about, and his army is significantly less competent than Hitler's army. But nevertheless, upon this effort, Vladimir Putin hopes to leave a legacy that will be cheered and revered and idolized by future Russians. It will be viewed as one of the worst mistakes ever made by an autocrat or a king or a czar or anybody else. It will be catastrophic for him, his family, and his country. It is a disaster. And the only thing that makes it, the one thing that makes it far more of a problem, far more of a frightening problem to deal with, is that this autocrat, unlike any other autocrat making a move quite like this, has nuclear weapons at his disposal. Not only that, he has probably almost complete autocratic control of those weapons, right? He doesn't need to get permission from anybody. And anybody that would raise their hand and go, not a good idea, is immediately going to be taken out back and shot. And so this is a absolute existential threat to modern society, the current human civilization. It's being recognized as that by media, by generals, by pundits who generally don't go there when they're asked about these things. It's like, I just don't want to go there. I mean, nobody wants to hear about nuclear annihilation or that. But they're going there every day. I know because I'm following it every day, and I'm on major stomach medications because of that. All right. I'm watching so others don't. I don't know. The point is that we've got a really serious problem. And so the number one way this war is affecting, well, the way that one of the reasons it's affecting the disclosure process is that the ability to get congressional committees or congressional committee chairs or the media to put a lot of effort into how can we get these hearings done, which is where this has all been heading all along. That's just been significantly undermined. No committee chair is going to push the ET issue and the need for hearings on the UAP issue out in front of or dealing with the war in Ukraine. It was already sidelined because of the pandemic, meaning we got to get through these surges, but no problem. Our technology is working. We'll get there. To no way we're going to put ourselves out on that. Political suicide, same for the president, and by and large, same for the press. There has been a substantial reduction in coverage since the war began. But nevertheless, there has been a lot of significant coverage, and we will talk about that. There's been a lot of coverage out of the UK, which probably has a little less of a barrier there to hit this issue in their news tabloids, which are by and large pretty good papers. They don't make stuff up. But nevertheless, it's clearly reduced that. So that's number one. That's the number one connection here. And all I can say is that thank God for the internet and social media. All right, now what am I talking about? There was a time when something like this would literally shove your thing, your issue, completely not only off the table, but into the dining room, onto the card table where the kids sit, and it just wasn't going to be in play. But that has not happened. And the reason is this. More so than any other time since the internet arises in the mid-90s and social media arises in the mid-aughts, okay? The UAP issue is now completely infused in the social media, internet connective reality out there. It's everywhere. It's in every aspect of it. TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and of course the new evolution of what I call the age of the podcast. You're probably familiar with that, Cardinal, as you are a one of sort of a founding member. I mean, you've been around for a while. The age of the podcast, the power of this and the implications of it are just beginning to be seen, I assure you. It's only just starting. It is another level of citizen journalism, only with better mics, better cameras, better platforms, and bigger followers. And nothing, I think, drives this point home better than the fact that a podcaster who worked years and years to develop a lot of followers and a reputation and a style, not that long ago, got not a 100 million, there's been updated on that, a $200 million deal to move his podcast, live stream podcast and archive, into and behind a paywall. And of course, I'm referring to Joe Rogan and Spotify. What? $200 million, right? And that's not to mention that there are YouTube influencers like the Beast and a couple of others who are making $5, $10, $15, $20 million a year off of the advertising revenues from their podcast on YouTube. And YouTube is always reducing the payouts.
I clearly can't wait until monetization.
Well, yeah, in the age of subscription. So, okay, so now the UAP issue now has been utterly infused in there. It's never going to go away. It's never going to be suddenly debunked or diminished. It's always there. I like to make the analogy of the background radiation in the universe, okay, which was discovered back in the 20th century when this was one of the most important, I think I got a Nobel Prize, one of the most important scientific developments, discoveries ever. And that was that no matter where you looked in the universe, there was this certain level of background radiation that could be detected. And it was pretty much the same everywhere. And they were finally able to understand it. It was, in fact, the residual effects of the very early Big Bang. Mm-hmm. And then by using very scientific analysis, they were able then to estimate when the Big Bang occurred. I don't know where that number is now. It's between 13 and 14.4 billion, I think. Does that mean the universe began then? No, it means that our section of it began then. And that was an incredibly big deal. And so everywhere you look, there's this background radiation throughout the galaxy. Think of the UAP issue as achieving that status now. And so whatever your thinking is on whether the people have a right to know or a need to know, or whether it's in their best interest or national security, whatever the hell reason you have, why let's hold off a little longer. Let's just classify some more stuff. Whatever your plans are, just throw them into the trash bin. They're no longer applicable, right? They're just fantasies. This issue now is implanted in the internet subconscious of this world. It is never going to go away, and it's only going to get worse. And so while the impact of this new war is clearly going to make it difficult to advance the specific process leading to the hearings and putting those together and holding them, which is critical to getting disclosure from our president, ultimately we will get past that unless the second thing happens that interacts with our UAP issue. And this is when things get a little hairy. Okay, so I invite your viewers, if they have some beverages close by that can improve their state of mind, you may want to grab some, take a drink. All right.
Good thing we're sitting down.
You got to be sitting down. This is good. Sit down. Here is the second significant aspect of the current situation in the Ukraine. It is the most dangerous time that we have had since the beginning of the Cold War in terms of the risk of nuclear war. All right. It is worse than the Cuban Missile Crisis. It is far more complicated than the Cuban Missile Crisis. And while we've almost had an exchange of missiles, or at least a launch of a nuclear missile that might very well have targeted a city on a couple of occasions, mostly by accident, misunderstanding, a miscommunication, which, by the way, is not a good thing. You know, it's like it doesn't really matter whether some crazy autocrat decides if I'm going to die, everybody's going with me. It doesn't really matter whether that's how it happens or whether it's simply an accident that takes place under extreme pressure. A nuclear war is a nuclear war. And all of the studies show that once they start, they just don't stop. In other words, it's like, oh, damn it, we launched 3 missiles. So sorry, New York, Washington, and LA. And yeah, we're really upset about Moscow, St. Petersburg, and Minsk, but let's stop now. Okay, we got to stop now. No, that's not the way it's going to work. That is the understanding. It's just conventional wars, yes. A lot of things can happen in conventional force-on-force events where some people could say, let's wait a minute, let's call a truce here. Wait a minute, let's make sure that what happened is supposed to have happened. Whatever. No. We have been living under that Damocles sword since basically 1947.
And it seems to me, Steve, like the administration, the DOD, the Pentagon, Joint Chiefs, whoever, have declined to get involved with defending Ukraine to avoid that exact thing.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. This is the first real test. I mean, I think Khrushchev trying to slip some missiles into Cuba because we had missiles over there in Europe, about as close to the new Russia as, the Soviet Union as Cuba is to us. I get the play.
In Turkey.
Yeah, right. I get the play. We're going to kill anybody who's going to get some missiles in there. And okay, we found out about it. Fortunately, the missiles couldn't arrive express. They had to come on a boat, which gave us a lot of time to formulate a strategy to deal with it, a lot of time to think, a lot of time to reflect. And ultimately, it was solved. That it was still scary, the 13 days of October 1962. This is way worse than that. Far more complicated. There's already force on force. People are dying. Russian soldiers are being killed with U.S. weapons. Okay, a lot of them, and a lot more are going to be killed. So this is the most frightening, scary, risky challenge to the wonderful theory of mutual assured destruction, MAD, which we have been living on since the 50s, meaning somewhere in the 50s, somebody came up with the idea, well, if you look at things closely and where we're going and where we already are, boy, if we actually launched some of these missiles with it would end up probably destroying all of civilization. Therefore,
10 times over.
Well, eventually, by the time that in 1980s, we had something like 85,000, total world had 85,000 nuclear weapons in stock in various phases of use and what have you. Plus, they'd expanded all the platforms. So
it's funny, Steve. I was in the gifted program when I was in school, and for some reason, I'm not sure I know what the reason was, but they took all the gifted program students from our school district, and that's here in Lawrence, Kansas, where the University of Kansas is. Go KU. And they taught us about mutually assured destruction. They pulled down a map and told us every city that has 100,000 people or more has a nuke with its name on it. And the only thing I could think of later, because it seems like a horrible thing to teach children, was that the kids in the gifted programs across the country were going to be the ones that ended up in STEM, right? So all your future scientists, mathematicians, the people that would be, sort of in charge of these kind of things, that's all I could make of it.
That's an interesting speculation. I was not in the gifted program, so all they taught me was how to get underneath my desk. All right, but
we did plenty of those too.
Yeah. So the situation is existential without question, and Putin has made a very calculated decision to really challenge this understood protocol that mutual assured destruction guaranteed there would be no war because nobody would be stupid enough to, quote, launch an attack, okay? Unless it was by accident, which would be accidental assured destruction. And nobody really talked about that much. So he's challenging that. And what he's doing is simple. Yeah, there cannot be a nuclear war, right? We've always known that. And the U.S. Has challenged this. When the U.S. goes into Vietnam with massive troops, massive bombing, including bombs on an area just south of China, right, which is developing nuclear weapons, we were obviously challenging the concept of mutual assured destruction, meaning, hey, we're dropping these bombs just on the other side of the border, but there's nothing you can do about it, because if you did, it could trigger a nuclear war. So just stay out of this, which they did, right? Similar things happened in Europe. I assure you, if it were not for nuclear destruction, some of these invasions, some of the bombings that took place in Iraq and Iran and Libya and Syria and so forth, would have triggered probably a conventional world war. Okay, but there are no conventional world wars anymore. It would be a nuclear war, and so bomb away we did. And while the U.S. has done plenty of bombing, believe me, all of which, well, it's never really been properly accounted for. Not surprisingly, Russia outdid us, particularly in Syria and Aleppo and so forth. I mean, they just obliterated people. Right? They were also challenging mutual assured destruction in their engagements in Georgia and Chechnya, but those were so much part of the new Russia world.
The internal.
Yeah. I mean, look, you want to destroy Chechnya, it's no skin off our butt, so we're not going to raise a stink. Well, you take all that together, all these challenges of the MAD, with no nuclear war, Putin decided, okay, let's test this a little more. Let's test this to the limit. I'm going to literally take this country, and if I can't, I'm going to annihilate it, and there's nothing you can do about it. And so he has really pushed it, and there's no question that he is taking these risks now because of his age and his health. I do not believe that he suddenly went back and read some archived papers of Stalin and decided, I need to be more Stalin. He was the guy, and I just don't have that kind of cred. No. So this is the aging autocrat dilemma, which does come up from time to time. All right. Now, with all that as preparation, now that I've frightened people and got them sitting there
all
going,
warm fuzzy,
I needed that like I needed a hole in the head. Let me make the connection to the UAP issue. It is non-trivial. All right. Okay. I'm going to try to make this brief. And I know a lot of people are just literally laughing their heads off right now.
I don't think that's true. I think everybody is rapt with attention.
Well, that's what my id tells my alter ego. Here's the deal. UAPs have been around a long time. I watch Ancient Aliens. I've been on Ancient Aliens. And I can tell you I'm sure there's a whole lot of theories and speculations on there that are not going to hold up. And probably are a little loosely put together. And I know there's a lot of archaeologists out there that cannot watch Ancient Aliens without tearing out whatever hair they have left. The simple truth is that on the matter of evidentiary matrix for ancient evidence of UAP presence, it's there. It's there in spades. It's really an extraordinary accomplishment of which Kevin Burns should get the proper credit for this. The fact that it's mixed in with a lot of more exotic theories just makes it safer, right? Just makes it more palatable, more interesting, and gets more people to watch it. And so while they're watching some bizarre theory about, I don't know, I don't want to pick on anything, but some really kind of, pretty crazy theory about what happened in some time back 2,000 years.
You'll have to forgive me. They haven't called me to be on Ancient Aliens yet, so I haven't watched any of it.
I'm sad to hear that. They look, it took me years to get on, and I did my thing, about 5 or 6 episodes. Haven't been on since. It's, they got a lot of people want to be on there, but don't give up. Anything is possible. But the point I'm trying to make is that this is an incredibly entertaining program, one of the most watched of all history. And the fact is, amongst a rather substantial array and spectrum of interesting and exotic theories about the past, which often are simply very difficult to prove because they're so old, is profound matrix of evidence showing that there's no way that all of this can be accounted for by, I don't know, some archaeologist's personal vanity theory. This clearly shows UAP presence, which was obviously reinforced by all the modern evidence. All right. Okay. So, been around a long time, but something changes in 1947. All of a sudden, they're everywhere, right? And they're hanging around nuclear facilities a lot, right off the bat, right? Sightings at Los Alamos, obviously the Roswell event, and so forth, and sightings up in the Northwest Washington. So while it may not have been perceived right away, in addition to an explosion of UAP activity in 47, a lot of this disproportionately seemed to be around nuclear facilities. All right. So was it a coincidence that this happened after we dropped the bombs in Japan? I say no. All right. Modern alien theorists say no, right? It's not a coincidence. Is it a coincidence that of all this activity, it turns out, you get enough activity going, something goes wrong, that a crash occurred near Roswell as opposed to, I don't know, Jacksonville, Florida? No, it's not a coincidence, right? Deliberate, no, but not surprisingly, if they're focusing on nuclear facilities, and that was the only nuclear air base in the world, the chances that something might happen, in this case, I believe was a massive New Mexico thunderstorm, that could bring a vehicle down. I believe that was the case. And so as we move forward, looking back retroactively with a lot more clarity now than anybody had in the 50s and 60s, there is clearly a direct connection between the modern era of UAP presence and the nuclear weapons issue. All right, now let's just let that set in, okay? It is a clear connection, which means it's part of their raison d'etre, at least for this area. It may not be the only thing that they're dealing with. It may not be the only thing they care about, but in terms of the issues going on in our world, there is no bigger issue than this, and they seem to be all over it. Okay, so that's interesting to note, but how strong does this connection become? How strong becomes our understanding of it? Well, we didn't have to wait long. About 20 years after Roswell, a new phenomena, a new group of events started taking place. It's possible there were a few prior to the mid-1960s that simply nobody has talked about, didn't come out, no leaks, no witnesses, what have you, would come forward. So we can't prove it. But starting in the mid-60s, evidence is overwhelming. They started tampering with our nuclear weapons. They started tampering with Soviet weapons. This isn't a conjecture. This isn't a theory. This is an absolute fact based on the testimony of a significant number of first-hand witnesses that were there when it happened. And they just weren't, I don't know, people working on some concession stands outside the base. These were people working on the nuclear weapons sites where the weapons were turned off repeatedly.
And in the Soviet Union, instead of being turned off into the no-go setting, they were turned on, and they had a devil of a time getting them turned off.
Let me elaborate there. Weapons were turned off in the Soviet Union and the United States, and the weapons were turned on far fewer occasions in both the Soviet Union and the United States. So the message was being sent to both sides. It's not known if any such events took place over Chinese nuclear facilities or British facilities or what have you. Don't know. My thinking is that, well, let me put it this way. There is one known example that falls into this, and that, of course, is the Rendlesham Forest case, which was, and turns out, we learned later, a nuclear facility. And so, but it's basically a U.S. nuclear facility. So I don't know if we could say that they were also picking on the British. I'm going to go with they're focusing on the two major powers, overwhelmingly the most powerful nuclear countries, and that's the Soviet Union, United States, and eventually Russia, United States. Okay, look, I can't. It's hard for me to intellectually describe how significant that is. I mean, it's having nuclear weapons is significant. The possibility of a war is significant. Okay, so it's a big issue. There's no question. And trillions of dollars have been spent on the facilities and the weapons and the research and the intelligence and the spying and everything else. It's a big deal. But when you talk about non-human intelligence, starfaring interstellar civilizations going out of their way to turn those weapons off, you are now in a whole nother place, which means that the tampering of nuclear weapons, as it became known, starting in the 60s with a couple of articles in some local newspapers up in Dakota, believe it or not, the Minot Daily or whatever the hell it's called, and other little leaks that took place, and then the emergence of the nuclear weapons tampering witnesses that came forward toward the end of the 20th century, rather. And all the efforts they've made since to get this issue forefront. This simple understanding should have been a massive media event. It should have already triggered a couple of decades ago extensive hearings in the Congress. It should be front and center of the concerns that the Department of Defenses in every country of the world, as well as the populations of every major country in the world, certainly the United States, it should have been literally front and center on our list of priorities. That's how big it is. I cannot imagine anything bigger. ET's coming in, hanging around in Egypt 5,000 years ago, then leaving, cruising around in the early 1900s, showing up here and there. You know, they're like tourists. They come, they go, right? Extensive engagement, sightings all over the world, and the direct interference with our nuclear weapons, that's 100% important. And so you may say, well, why didn't that happen? And the answer is simple. Why didn't any of these witnesses yet to have a moment in front of a congressional hearing to give testimony under oath? Why has the Pentagon completely ignored all of these witnesses? Meaning, what witnesses? I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know who they are, right? Because it's so important. It's such a big deal that it has to be ignored. You can't even try to undermine it with disinformation for fear you'll draw attention to it. Like somebody who responds to a lot of trolling on the internet just makes it worse. And so they completely ignored Corso. They completely ignored Bob Salas and all of his fellow witnesses and Robert Hastings, all of that work and the press conference and what news coverage did turn up, because the UAP activist movement did succeed in getting some coverage on this issue. No follow-up, right? Nothing appropriate to its importance. Is you just do nothing, right? That's how big it is. Because the U.S. government, the DOD, and any politicians that know about the ET issue, and I'm sure there are plenty, know that if that particular aspect of the ET presence were to become fully engaged, the truth embargo collapses like that. And if your position is the truth embargo must continue, right? Forever, if possible, but certainly as long as I'm alive, or just needs to continue for whatever national security reasons you wish to put forward, then you cannot address the connection between the ETs and nuclear weapons.
So, again, to sort of boil it down, do you think that there's a distraction element to disclosure vis-a-vis the Russian war in Ukraine, or vice versa?
No, sic hoc ergo propter hoc. One of the great fallacies that people are constantly fall into, and it's human nature, is that if something comes after something, it was caused by that something, right? If B
Correlation
follows
without
A causes B.
causation. Yeah.
Yeah, and you just, this is something you have to constantly push against. Not only that, but we live in an incredibly complicated world. Let's just agree to that, all right? They used to be a lot simpler. There was a time when you didn't even know if anybody was living 100 miles outside of your range of vision. That's not the case now. Some diplomat catches a cold in Belarus. It's turning up on the intelligence feeds for 75 intel op. I mean, whatever. Okay, they keep track of each other's mistresses. It is an incredibly complex world, and things are constantly happening. And so, trying to somehow understand and think about all of that and start connecting dots so that you actually have a picture of what's happening in the world at any given moment is absurd. The US government has supercomputers managing other supercomputers, and a lot of the other nations do as well. And they can't do it. All they can do is try to get a decent handle on things and hope for the best. And so history is the collection of untold billions of events, small, medium, and large, moving forward in time like the tide coming in from the ocean, right, towards the shore.
Well put.
And so you can stand on the shore and wave your magic wand and say, look, I would prefer if you would arrive a couple of hours late today. I just not ready for the tide, or I need that part of the wave or tide needs to hold off. We'll bring this one in and then we'll whatever. No. Okay, forget about it. It is a massive tide, and we are riding on that tide, whether we like it or not. All of our little boats are on that tide moving forward. And so you have to have a respect for that as you try to do your thing, try to accomplish what you want to accomplish, whether it's an activist or whether it's a secretary of state or a head of state or a scientific project or any political activist movement. You're all on a tide moving forward. Respect it, okay? And so if there's another boat over here to the right that's got some people in it, right, and you want to look over and say, what are you doing there, right? What are you doing, near me on this tide? Hey, come on, right? They're going to be there, right? They're going to be there. They have no choice. I don't want to belabor this, but let me now get down to the key point. The nuclear threat arising from the events in the Ukraine are the result of the United States and Russia and the 6 other, possibly 7 nuclear powers to simply fail to understand that mutual assured destruction is nothing but a concept. It's an idea, right? It's not even legally binding, okay? And that given the exponential increase in the complexity of the modern world, it will fail. It will fail, all right? And when it does, that's the ball game. That's it, okay? You don't have to worry about which political party you're going to vote for in the next election or get overly upset about some political leader that you utterly despise. You don't have to worry about whether you're going to make the millionaire mark or the billionaire mark or be the first trillionaire. You don't have to worry about any of that. It's over. The only thing you have to worry about is, do you want to survive or not survive? And if you do survive, how in the hell are you going to keep it from being hell on earth for you? What can you do? That's it. That's what it all comes down to. I mean, the world may rebuild. It may take 100, 200, 300 years. You probably won't be around for more than 10 of those.
But
And
we
so
go
that's
back
it.
to the Stone Age, essentially.
Well, yeah, that's probably not that bad. It won't be that Stone, but it'll go. In fact, the Stone Age would be better. I mean, the Stone Age was rather kind of a calm, relaxed time.
Yeah,
not a lot on your
comparatively.
mind. Find a decent cave to hang out in. Come together as a tribe so you can defend yourself against wild animals, and just have a kid, live to 30, and die. No,
Yeah.
that would be good. No. The post-nuclear war age will be much worse than any previous age because there will be things happening that we've never seen before. Okay, there will be pain and suffering of a type we've never really experienced that before, and so it's kind of a big deal. It's kind of a big deal, and so this episode in Ukraine is, first of all, a reminder that we never dealt with the mutual assured destruction concept. We have not gotten rid of enough nuclear weapons. We have not done the diplomacy. We have not done what we should do if we were a sane civilization. All right? So that's a nice reminder. But it's also a reminder to everybody that knows or suspects that our nuclear weapons is a major concern for multiple extraterrestrial species that have been engaging our planet, who have the ability to turn all of our weapons off, which we can't do, right?
Right.
As far as we know, there is no one in this country, unless they actually have the plans. Just no outside that has the ability to say, yeah, let's pull a April Fool's prank on the government, turn all the nuclear weapons off at some flight, nuclear flight. No, so they can do that, and they're doing it, and we haven't really publicly engaged it. We haven't discussed it properly. We have not had testimony on it. So while the government may have some thoughts about this and may have some understanding, the world's people don't. And so it's a reminder that we don't, and maybe it's time we should. What does that mean? It means this. The war in the Ukraine, via the nuclear implications of that war, have put substantial additional pressure on the DOD and the MOD and those in Congress that are starting to figure it out if they didn't already know, and the journalists that have been sort of covering this issue for the last 70 years that are starting to really get on board, as well as the new journalistic entities that have been formed of high quality around this issue, devoting
Leslie
most of their
King
effort.
and Ralph Blumenthal certainly have helped.
Sure, these are journalists, okay? I'm talking about like places like the Debrief, right?
Mm-hmm.
The War Zone, the Drive. These are high-end, very competent journalists that are really approaching this issue with a high degree of sophistication. Well, that's new, right? And of course, without question, the nuclear weapons tampering issue is in play in the podcast world, as in right now, okay? And so it's helping to drive, to herd, I guess you could say, journalists, academics, politicians, as well as motivated investigators, activists, and so forth, toward addressing the nuclear aspect of this phenomena, which is only going to increase the pressure to have these hearings. Which is to say that, not surprisingly, the principal political platform on which the disclosure activist process will finally achieve its final goal is the national security implications of the extraterrestrial presence, all right, and UAPs in general. That's the way it has to be. It's always had to be that way. If you're going to get politicians and journalists to take the degree of risk that they have not been able to take but have to take in order to wrap this up, you have to give them a platform. If it's a platform on, yeah, you want to go up on the Hill and try to hold meetings with staff members of top committee chairs, and your reason for being in that meeting is to sell the idea of an extraterrestrial embassy that we need to build, Let's have hearings about an extraterrestrial embassy, right? They're already here. Let's build an embassy. You're not going to get here. If you want to go up on the hill and with legitimately raise the issue why we need to have congressional hearings to deal with the contact phenomena, you're not going to get those hearings. All right. And I could go pick one thing after another. In the real world, that is not going to happen. But in the real world, given that the connection between an ET presence, if it's true, which it is, the UAP craft, which are real, and national security is obvious. Right? And so anybody that wants to go there is on safe ground. And the movement helped to make it safer ground by working on the language. And one of the most important things the movement has done is to move us sufficiently from UFO to UAP to achieve the necessary result. And what am I talking about? Boy, I am sorry that I have this problem. I'm not sick, just old. So,
speaking of which,
yeah,
thank you for mentioning yesterday or the day before that it was time for people over 50 to get their second booster. I got mine yesterday, and I appreciate you mentioning that to me.
Okay, it's an opinion I have. I put it out there, but it's not my issue, and I'm not a vaccination activist, but I tell people
it follows
that
the CDC guidelines, and
yes.
And I wasn't aware that they'd changed it from 6 months to 4. So
yeah, when you're 75, you need to pay close attention. Okay, so and this is something I love to talk about. I've hated the acronym UFO going all the way back to 2000. I knew it was awful. It was like a badge of ridicule that we were forced to sew into our clothing. UFO, so that everybody could know. Oh, UFO person. Okay.
Worse.
Nice
to
see
saucer.
Yeah. Nice to see it. I have to go now. Okay. And it was a brilliant component of the truth embargo, the creation of what I call the intellectual ghetto of ufology. It was the ridicule badge.
Yeah.
And it's like, hey, and we know of other examples. I'm not going to go there. We don't need to go there, but we know of other examples of where an issue or people or other have the ridicule connection, and it's been institutionalized to make it easy for all of those who you want to move in a certain direction to be on board with that. Okay.
Right.
So it was a problem because every year that passed, that ridicule curtain just grew thicker and higher. And so if you're a journalist or a politician or a scientist and you want to address this issue and you can't do it without saying UFO, you're not going to address the issue. So we come up with the UAP. Now, UAP means exactly the same thing as UFO. It means exactly the same thing.
It just doesn't have the baggage of 70 years of cover-up.
It hasn't been tainted by 70-some years of government truth embargo, misinformation stuff. Yeah. And so, guess what? If you're a member of Congress or a journalist and you're going to write an article, you get to say UAP. And by and large, people know what you're talking about without the ridicule. It's like you rip that badge off of your clothing. And so people will say, oh, okay. What is it that you want to mention? Oh, that's interesting. This is non-trivial.
Speaking of that, one of the things that you say is it's not lights in the sky, but lies on the ground. Can you break that down for us?
Yeah, it's along the same lines. One of the ways that the truth embargo has succeeded is to basically, without saying it, make it kind of clear. If you want to try to prove this, prove away. Do all the science you want. Do all the studies you want. Write up all the cases you want. No problem. Prove and prove and prove and prove. Of course, you may or may not know this, but there's no amount of proof that you can come up with where we're going to go, you got it. No.
Right.
You can prove it until the end of time. You can photograph 1,000,000 lights in the sky. You can interview 1,000,000 cases. You can cross interview. You can come up with all kinds of. It doesn't matter. You can prove this. It doesn't matter. We're not going to acknowledge it, and you're not going to get disclosure. You're not going to get the confirmation. And at some point, it was early on, I'm going, screw this. In other words, I'm not going to play your game. I'm not a researcher. I'm not going to play your game. I'm not going to try to prove this. It's already proven. Okay. It's already proven. My job is to point that out to enough people and also do the activist thing to maneuver you into to a situation where the prove it for the rest of your life won't work anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And so the phrase, it's no longer about lights in the sky, it's about lights in the ground, means that those lights in the sky you've been hearing about, it's proven that some of them, many of them, are in fact real craft, piloted or controlled by non-humans. Okay, that's a fact now. And so let's move on, folks. That's what that's all about. It's the same thing with the UAP versus UFO. And to get back to my point, that the national security issue is the platform we have to be on in order to wrap this up. And the ET issue obviously has national security implications, all right? But there is no aspect of the UAP ET history with more national security implications than the fact that they shut our nuclear missiles down, all right? And so when Robert Salas, in cooperation with Robert Hastings, who wrote
UFOs,
the most important book maybe in the entire issue in terms of its importance to the political process, UFOs and News. It's a seminal work. And then they did a documentary on it just to sort of make it available to people who don't read anymore.
I didn't know that. Where can we watch
UFOs
that?
and Nukes? Find it on the web quite easily. It's about 45 minutes long. It's quite good. I think they're trying to update it a little bit, but and even though they had gone public around 2000, they held a press conference in 2010 at the National Press Club, which is in the National Press Building, where I have my office in Washington. I attended. A lot of press attended, and they just laid it out. Here it is. I was there for this. I was there for that. Here's the book, blah, blah, blah. The media went, They wrote a couple of articles. The Washington Post wrote a comedy piece, and nothing happened. Nobody in Congress said, okay. They continue to plug away. I did my part. Bob Salas never gave up as they got older and older into their late 70s, into their 80s. So last year, Bob Salas brings some witnesses together again. I think a couple from 2010 and maybe one or two new ones. A couple of, I think one or more of the 2010 witnesses had died. And they hold another press conference at the National Press Club, right? And say the same thing. Very few press showed up for that. But again, remember, we're in the middle of this pandemic. And also, there's another historical process underway, by the way, that is slowed down the disclosure process, our effort to get hearings and end the truth embargo. And that is, we're going through a chaotic political period that is unlike anything in the modern era. I don't know what was going on in the early 1800s or the late 1800s. I don't know. But in terms of 1900 on, I've never seen anything like it. I mean, this is a toxic waste dump politically right now. And so the ability of politicians to maneuver, of committees to act, of parties to take positions that could be constructive has been undermined. It has just been shredded. And the act of disclosure is a political act. It's not a scientific thing. It's not the president's come forward and say, hey, I got together with a couple of my aides and we came up with a scientific proof of ET. But no, it's nothing scientific at all. It's a political decision to end the truth embargo. And so the politics now could not be worse. So you've got three things now that are sitting on the process. War in Europe, the never-ending surging pandemic, and a toxic political environment unlike I've ever seen in my lifetime, and I'm a very old guy. Okay, so you got all of that. But so they hold another press conference. Nothing. But it's clear that the how would you say, the infusion of this issue into the larger, endlessly growing internet reality. I'm starting to see clear evidence, and I have some insider, some info on this, that the nuclear weapons tampering is not going to be orphaned much longer. In other words, if those hearings take place, those witnesses will be there, right? And there are a lot of them that are not even known publicly. There are a number of them that have never come forward that could come forward. And I'm particularly referring to the security guys. Most of the witnesses that come forward were the officers. These were people that were either in charge of turning the missiles back on, or they were the officers on duty at the time.
Above ground.
Exactly. And so naturally, they're older than the security guys that were up there, 20-year-old guys standing there with a rifle staring up at a 40-inch glowing orb hanging over the base, losing their minds. And not surprising.
They literally were. They were calling down and losing their shit.
Yeah. I imagine there were some that had maybe read some sci-fi and maybe read a little of some of the early books by Ruppelt and Kehoe that were going, I knew it. But the point is that so they're younger, but also these are not officers. These are non-coms or enlisted, whatever. And so naturally, their willingness to come forward later at any time was far less. In other words, they didn't have the gravitas of being an officer. They got some families they got to protect. So they didn't come forward, but they're there and they're younger. And so the potential for 10, 20, 30 nuclear weapons tampering witnesses, firsthand on-site witnesses, is absolutely there. Do they need that many? No. And so the nuclear threat being generated by Vladimir Putin's old age and deteriorating health is almost guaranteed.
Otherwise,
it's almost guaranteed that there's no way the nuclear witnesses are going to be ignored. So there you have the intersections, as best as I can describe them, of these mammoth events, right? Or this mammoth event, the extraordinary, who cares about mutual assured destruction war in Ukraine, all right? Which is not just a war. It is in fact an act of criminal. It's a criminal act.
Clearly,
its impact is going to be worse than probably any invasion that I can think of in the near term on the general world. Why? Because Vladimir made the mistake of not shutting down all the social media and confiscating all the cell phones in Ukraine before invading. And so not only is this particular invasive act of war going to be seen quicker, but also by more people worldwide than anything previous. Nothing compares to it, right? It's being chronicled live as it happens on the ground. Some civilian gets shot in the head on Monday, and the body is being shown on TikTok on Wednesday. Now, it doesn't matter how much Putin shuts down media in the Soviet Union. It doesn't matter how much, not Russia. It doesn't matter whatever explanations they come out. No, we didn't do that. It was a Ukraine prank. They're just having, it was a April Fool's prank, right? Put on by the Ukraine, just to kind of have some fun with the people on the internet. Doesn't matter. There is a vast archive of video record of the whole damn thing, which is, I don't know, going to be reaching multiple terabytes any day now, that is going to be around forever.
Yeah.
And so consequently, the visceral impact, I think, on the world, including world leaders, even world leaders we're not comfortable with, is going to be profound. And it comes under this category of profundity. We can't do this any longer. You know, this isn't 3000 BC. This isn't even 1100 AD. We can't do this anymore. This idea as war as an alternative to diplomacy, this idea as war is kind of sport. This idea as war is simply a natural manifestation of hyper testosterone guys who just simply got no id, right?
Well, and let's face it, they want to rule by fear.
Well, whatever they want to do, it's psychopathic.
Yeah.
Look, there are X number of psychopaths in the world, and sociopaths in the world at any given time. We know that. There's nothing new about that.
Why is
But
the
this
percentage
idea
of
that-
politicians so high that are, that have psychopathy issues?
Yeah, and that's fine. Just like there are people with blue eyes and brown eyes and people that are really tall, really short. We just have to stop electing them. We have to stop allowing them to get in power. We know they're there. We know who they are, but we can't wait until they get in power, steal all the money, right? Kill off all their opponents, and then go, it's time for a color revolution. I mean, this is a message to the world. It's a serious message. You can't let this happen anymore. And then the other message is, we can't have nukes. We got to get rid of the nukes. We're going to use them, right? And that's it. Okay. Yeah. And that message has been out there all along. We certainly got a little message back in 1962. All right. Mm-hmm. And there were some people a little worried about all the bombing and the mass destruction and killing in the Middle East. But let's be fair, they were the wrong color. And so they didn't get overly worked up about it.
Yeah.
But now people of the right color, white people with blonde hair and blue eyes, are fleeing in the millions. And not surprisingly, the media is intending on interviewing every single one of them. Every mother, every kid, every widow. Well, what can I say? Racism, that's a minor.
Xenophobia.
Plus. Yeah, it's a plus. Because if that's what it takes to interview the victims of this kind of madness, okay. So again, Vlad made a mistake there. If you're going to create 6 million refugees, they need not be white. You don't want to be white, Vlad. You kind of screwed up there. And so the visceral impact of this event, if we survive it, is going to be historically profound and viewed as such. And one of those impacts is that it may serve the purpose of guaranteeing that the national security platform for getting the hearings for the witnesses we need so the President of the United States can comfortably and politically safely confirm the ET presence and not be trolled to death or gaslighted to death by everybody on the internet that's irritated that well, why didn't you tell us sooner or whatever, will be minimized, could be critical. All right. And there's a lot of people out there that don't see that. I don't blame them. This is a pretty complicated equation I've painted here today, which is where I come in my humble contributions to this field as a political activist, not as a member of Congress, not as a former member of the CIA or the DIA or the MOD or
the BBC,
or BB or the New York Times. I am one of the few completely sole 100% political activists with a long track record. And that means that I will say whatever the hell I want to say. I will not limit myself in any way.
Speaking of which, that's a perfect segue into my next question.
Excellent.
When did you establish the disclosure wire, and how has it proceeded since its inception?
Okay. Look, how can I put this? I tried to launch a podcast back in early 2020. I had gotten into the National Press Building. It was a miracle. I had some help. But I moved in late 2019, and I started to put it together. But nobody told me about the pandemic. I missed that email, right? It was like, there's a
Didn't get
pandemic
the
coming,
memo.
Steve. You're going to have to sequester yourself in that office for 2 years. you know, I had no idea. And so that comes in. I don't want to go into the details, but let's say it was not fun. And so it just never got off the ground. Okay. And so I put up a video, I promoted it, but it never got off the ground. Look, another person under the same circumstances might have whipped together the thing, got it going, because I know there are people that have launched podcasts now out of their basement, right? With bad cameras, bad sound, and now they've got like 300 of them up there. But I was in a very, very difficult position. And I focused on some other things. And so it went nowhere. All right. So it doesn't exist, except that there may be some developments in the very near future related to that, which will be hopefully very important and people will be excited about. And I hope to be able to announce that soon. And that's as far as I can go right now.
Fair enough. So let's change gears a little, Steve. I'd like to ask you about the citizens' hearing on disclosure. What can you tell us about your 2013 effort, how it changed things, and where it's going from here?
Complex question. The citizens' hearing disclosure was a successful effort to, as I had done with 6X conferences, but on a much grander scale, to bring the UAP issue to Washington, D.C., to present it in a way. The fundamental goal was to create an event that was so substantial, so serious, and do something that would make it easier for members of Congress to embrace the issue. Okay. And so the idea, which I'd come up with initially about late 2000, 2001, was what if we held a mock congressional hearing in Washington? And I was thinking of the press club back then, because just prior to my thinking developing on this issue, Stephen Greer had held that very important press conference at the National Press Club in the main ballroom, the room that you're seeing right there. Mm-hmm. It's an incredible room, and it's well known. And there were 200 people in that room. There were 100 some media, there were camera crews, and he had a lot of very important witnesses present for a few minutes. He provided a tape of other witnesses. It was a major event that could have had very significant impact. Okay, very impressive. And I was there. So I got to thinking, okay, that was cool. What if we held a mock congressional hearing in that room, mm-hmm. where instead of witnesses testifying to the media, we had witnesses testifying to former members of Congress? I knew that there was no chance of getting current members of Congress, right?
Right.
And I put up a website, tried to raise a little money and worked on it at the time, but it wasn't going anywhere. And this is 2002, 3, 4, 5. The opportunity to actually do this event came about in late 2012. I'll spare the details. The point is the money became available. I was able to get that money in and establish a basis to move forward. There were other people, a lot of people involved that helped to do this. Most of that was involved in the tech part of it, the filming, the live streaming, and things like that. But I put together the witnesses and the members of Congress, along with help from one of my most important colleagues, and that is and friends, is Joe Bookman, a longtime political guy with a whole lot of contacts that I didn't have. And when I was struggling with putting that panel together, that critical panel of 6 former members of Congress, he broke the ice and essentially, one way or another, accounted for 5 of the 6. And so, and then he was a moderator, right? A superb moderator of it, and Danny Sheehan was the legal counsel as well as a witness. So this is an event that took place over 5 days, Monday through Friday, April 29 and May 3. The entire thing was filmed. There were 42 witnesses and 30 hours of testimony. And no, I have never met a single person in the 9 years since that said they didn't like it or Didn't do it. It wasn't any good.
Right.
It's got nothing but praise. And it did get some political coverage. I mean, it did get some media coverage. About a year later, I then delivered the entire 30-hour record on a DVD set to every member of Congress's office, all 535.
That must have been a lot of DVDs, Steve.
5,310, actually about 5,400 DVDs. And a gentleman by the name of Ron James, also another colleague, was critical in putting those sets together. I mean, literally, it was a massive
And
job.
those aren't available to the public. Those were just for Congress.
Those were just a congressional. They were of reasonable quality. Another set of enhanced, colorized versions were put on, were made for sale on a website called disclosurewire.org. To the public. Recently, they were made available, I think, on YouTube, either for free with ads. I was not a part of that.
Mm-hmm.
That was other people that were doing that. But so the idea was, look, if you're a member of Congress, watch this, and you'll get an idea of what it would be like to have testimony in front of Congress and in front of the world on this issue. And a lot of these witnesses were not military witnesses. I mean, there were a small minority were military witnesses. A lot of them were researchers and activists in the field. In other words, the field of, quote, ufology or extraterrestrial phenomena.
Such as it is.
And it was fine. It was absolutely fine. And so that was the purpose of holding that hearing. I had expectations about what it might do, how would it trigger hearings, how much coverage would it be. As always, it wasn't nearly as impacting as I'd hoped in the near term. However, remember, part of the reason for holding them was to create the videos that were going to be sent to Congress. Now, those got there in late 2014, December 2014, as planned, just before the 2-year presidential campaign of Hillary Clinton, the Democrats and the Republicans starts, okay? And so that was the thing. In other words, at the point that the campaigns are getting underway and these people are starting to make their moves to, hey, pay attention to me, this footage is all over Washington, D.C. for whatever effect it was going to have. But the major impact ultimately was this. That footage, which I made sure was made available to huge numbers of journalists, right? That's different. So the journalists got the footage. And so the journalists are seeing how these hearings might go, okay? And they're going, that's impressive. So when I started my media campaign to put the pressure on the Clinton campaign and the Clinton team, political team, which was Secretary Clinton, John Podesta, Barack Obama, and John Podesta, Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, and Bill Clinton, okay, to put the pressure on them to make them have to address the issue, okay? You know what I'm saying? And it worked. In other words, the combination of suddenly seeing these news articles about the Clinton connection to the ET issue, combined with this incredible footage of these hearings in front of former members of Congress, was enough to get them to go, this is a story. And they started contacting the Clinton campaign, John Podesta's office, and maybe even Barack, maybe in the White House, and say, what about this ET connection to Secretary Clinton?
And this has a connection to the Rockefeller Initiative, correct?
Oh yeah, that was part of the connection. That was the key connection. And so suddenly, so in other words, I got the issue in play, and some articles were written in the Washington Times and the Hill. That's not a lot, but what really changed the paradigm was that when the campaign and Podesta started getting these queries from journalists who were legitimately contacting with, we would like a statement, we're going to write this article about Hillary Clinton and this or whatever, would you like to make a statement? Well, they didn't want to make a statement. They didn't want to have to talk about it at all. They had plans. Don't get me wrong. They had big plans. But the plan was, we're going to win the White House, and then we're going to do the ET thing, all right? But along the way to winning the White House, we'd rather not talk about the ET thing because some of the advisors think it could be a problem. But when the journalists started approaching them with, what are they going to do? They knew that they couldn't say, what ET thing? What are you talking about? That wasn't going to work. And if they engaged them in any kind of back and forth, it was going to escalate. And so essentially the word I was getting back from the journalists is that we contacted them, we got nothing back. They won't respond at all. We don't even get a no comment. And you know what happens when a journalist gets an absolute nothing back? They know there's definitely a story. And the Clinton people knew that that's what that meant. And so they had to formulate a strategy where they would address the issue under controlled circumstances, like appearing on the Kimmel Show or the Colbert Show, right? Or giving a brief interview to a particular journalist, or giving a Politico interview. Just don't get into a heavy Q&A with the top political reporter from the New York Times. They couldn't do that. And so every time they did this limited hangout, I guess you could say, which was, I think, serving their purpose, it generated more articles. And so by the time we get to June, I think, of 2016, 400 articles had been written specifically mentioning the connection in some way between Secretary Clinton's campaign and the ET issue. And 100 of those articles included me, right? Or PRG. It's actually referring to me, which was nice. I mean, I like that. It helped me get more journalistic attention, though interestingly enough, it never got me a single call from any news program saying, Mr. Bassett, I saw you mentioned in the New York Times. Do you have any comment on that article? Not a single call. That's something I'd like to explore someday. But the point is that the Citizen Hearing on Disclosure, its legacy will be it helped to get that political coverage of her connection to the ET issue, which legitimized this issue in a powerful way. And one of the best examples of the, quote, legitimization process was when Hillary Clinton made the famous interview with Jimmy Kimmel, comes on, and he asked her about the fact that her husband did some things and, you know, maybe made some statements, but nothing happened. And what does she think about that? And she then takes a pause and she says, well, I'm going to do it again. Okay, meaning I'm going to go after this issue again. And then she follows up immediately and says, you know, there's a new phrase. It's no longer UFO. The proper term now is UAP. And a lot of people thought, what the hell? I mean, it's the same thing. Okay, what are you doing? You're posturing, right? What you try to act like a professional here, whatever. She took a lot of crap. Hey, let's face it, you're going to run for president. You're going to get mountains of crap. Most people didn't get it. What she was saying is there is a new term, UAP, and that's the term to use because this issue is real. And UAP doesn't have the ridicule the government embellished it with for decades to keep it from being seen as real. So she did us a huge favor there and probably did more than any single person to ensure UAP would replace UFO ultimately in terms of dealing with the issue in a formal way. All right. And so that was how I see the legacy of the, and that footage still exists. I assure you, I have the copies. And I fully intend to utilize that material in the appropriate way at the appropriate time. But first, I've got to launch a fairly big project, and then we'll move on to that. And I was a little worried that I wasn't going to be able to get things done soon enough. But that tide of history has said, Steve, no problem, my friend. All those boats out there you're worried about, they're on the same tide as you. So your timing may work out okay.
Steve, what can people do to help affect change toward disclosure, especially with PRG?
Now, look, everybody that likes a UAP Twitter post or a podcast episode or subscribes to anything out there that's UAP related that has a subscription thing, right? Or just donates. Every person that comments in the chat room on any of these programs, live or archive, any person that writes their member of Congress, particularly those that have spoken out on the issue, like Burchett and Griego and Gillibrand and Rubio and Mark Warner and so forth, are helping this process. Or if they just contact their rep and say, look, this is real, pay attention to this. If any of your senators or Congress representatives are on the armed services or intelligence committees, definitely contact them. That's very important. All of this is helping to drive the process. Now, people that are starting brand new podcasts addressing this issue, that's good. People that are starting new media, I keep seeing new stuff all the time. That's good. MUFON has just made a very important announcement that they're going political on this issue. Finally, I started telling them they needed to do this in 1999. I literally met with the board and said, you need to go political, not just be a research organization. Be like the ARP, have a properly formed lobbying section, and tell everybody you're lobbying for disclosure. You'll get another 100,000 members. Well, they finally got to it. Only took 23 years. Yeah. They have hired a lobbying firm. I don't know which one. They have put out an announcement of this. And recently, a number of people related to MUFON went up on the Hill and had a 2-day meeting fest with a whole number of members of Congress, getting meetings that I couldn't get right now, not only because I've been somewhat sidelined due to the pandemic, but because they're the oldest organization on this issue pretty much in the world. I mean, the most known, one of the largest. It is a very established organization. It has its critics. Who doesn't? And so when, and also they're getting support from Mellon and Elizondo. And so when they approach the members of Congress and say, look, we'd like to come in and talk to the member, it's pretty reasonable for the member to go, okay, fine. I mean, you're MUFON. Come on in. You know, when Steve calls up, it's like, I think I've heard of you. Aren't you the UFO lobbyist or whatever? Or, again, I'm a one-man band in a way. So, and that doesn't mean I won't be able to get meetings with members at some point. But in other words, there is a way you get there. And every path is different. MUFON had a clear path. They finally took that path. I would have loved them to be trying to hold these meetings 10 years ago. But that's okay. The tide of history. They're one more boat on this tide. And so they have now moved in. So now if you are a member of MUFON, if you're not a member of MUFON, join, because they've now gone political. They're not just taking, you don't just join MUFON now so you get to go out in the weeds and look for UFO trace cases, right? You join MUFON to support their efforts now to get political resolution. And also because of UFO TV, I mean, MUFON TV is fantastic. So you join for that reason. Now they have the potential to get 40, 50,000 new members, just like that. ARP has millions of members, not because of the insurance or the magazine, but because everybody that joins ARP knows that ARP is lobbying the Congress on all issues related to people over the age of, 60 or something, okay? And there's a lot of issues that people of 60 have. It's a no-brainer. So now MUFON has gone there. So if you haven't joined it, join it. And if you have joined it, tell them how pleased you are that they have decided to engage Congress politically as one of the best-known, largest UAP organizations in the world. Look, MUFON cannot remove UFO from its name. That's okay. But fortunately, it's got an M on one end and an N on the other. So it doesn't quite carry
putting UAP in the middle of that just wouldn't work.
It's not going to, it would be what? MUAPN. MUPIN.
Yeah,
Forget
it sounds
like
a television network.
It's okay. They can keep it. It's not a problem. But they could create a division. They could create a political division and give it a special name. Okay. The point is that you support them, join them, and tell them how pleased you are that they're doing this. Okay. So these are just some of the ways. And I do have a project coming out soon. It's kind of a big deal. It's complicated. Naturally, we hope it's going to go well. All I can ask is that when we launch it, boy, any support we can get, the sooner we can get it, will be wonderful. And it will help ensure that my work will be hopefully having some impact. And along those lines, I should mention that that PRG is soon. Again, everything is just got to stay with the flow, but hopefully, certainly this year, UAP will. Forgive me. Paradigm Research Group will finally be converted to a nonprofit 501(c). All right.
Oh, excellent.
Which will have a lobbying component because that's allowed. Okay. But then I will have some projects that are outside, but relevant outside the nonprofit organization. In other words, there'll be some for-profit stuff, but it's all serving the advocacy. So I hope people will do that. So that's kind of what's happening on my end. I think I even took down the contribution page for right now because I was going to switch over to whatever. Anyway, it's not hard to find me if somebody wants to make a contribution. A really big one right now would be wonderful, but I've been gotten so many contributions over these last 23 years that I'm almost hesitant to say that. I had tremendous support.
There's a donate link on PRG website, right?
I think I suspended it because.
So what's the best way for people to get money to PRG?
Well, I mean, just contact
to lobby.
Just contact me. PRG at paradigmresearchgroup.org. The contact information is still up on the website, paradigmresearchgroup.org. Phone number, contact address. They can just contact me. But I took the contribution section down because I know I'm going to convert to a nonprofit, and I didn't want to have a situation where, without knowing this, people would be contributing to me, and then I become a nonprofit, and they're, well, wait a minute, it gets confusing, and I don't want to be ambiguous about this, and so we're moving forward. So soon I will obviously put that all back up. But it'll be. I have all the proper language up there that PRG is now a nonprofit. If you support it, you will get a tax deduction, as opposed to other things I'm going to be doing where there won't be a tax deduction, but are still very valuable projects, which I think will be important. And so I'm just kind of I'm in between.
Right. We do have a question from Philip Blair in the chat who asks, is there a disclosure pledge for members of Congress to sign or something like that so we can encourage our senators and representatives to sign on?
Reflecting what I said earlier about the fact that the UAP issue is now literally infusing the entire social media, internet world, there's all kinds of things happening all the time. Petitions are being thrown up. There's been some activist little projects, right? Some people went down in front of the White House. Pledges are putting out there, manifestos, anti-peace and anti-weapons in space. I can't even keep tabs of it. So all I can say is, and what impact will some of these things have? Petitions have lost a lot of they're so easy to do now. They've lost a lot of their impact. But still, it's all part of the larger picture. It's all part of the participation. Okay. And so by all means, do a Google search on UFO petitions, ET petitions, disclosure petitions, do a search on UAP or UFO pledges or congressional pledges UAP, and you'll find them, right? And sign them. What the hell? Sign them all. It's okay. It's all right. Again, you'll be surprised at how many people have made their little thing. In other words, I'm going to set up a website. I'm going to do this. It's my contribution. All right. Some of these things get a little bit of legs. Some of them disappear after a while. But there is now clearly a broad-scale international populist movement based in the internet on multiple platforms where this information is now being shared and reshared, linked and relinked with links to the websites with the hard evidence, like John Greenwald's magnificent, Black Vault, which he's been working on for 30 years and has always gotten some attention, but it's now John's day. Okay. In other words, based on everything that's going on now, all of that 30 years of work that he's done on the Black Vault is now going to become so patently germane that he's going to have to hire a friggin' scheduling manager to book his interviews, both journalistic interviews as well as video interviews, and just keep up with all the things that are happening. No one has done what John Greenwald did. No one has more documents than he has. And all of a sudden, documents are a big thing. And all of a sudden, the journalists are going, wait a minute, they just released like 1,500 documents because of a number of FOA requests that were put in. There were a number of them. And so a lot of people got similar sets. It depends on the search terms. John got his in. But it turns out the Sun newspaper put in 2017 their own request and got 1,500. And naturally, even though other people had put the requests in and the documents were floating around, the Sun newspaper, which is a big friggin' newspaper, trust me, folks.
Yeah.
It's the Sun, it's the U.S. Sun, it's the Scottish Sun, it's the Irish Sun, and it reaches tens of millions of people. They're understandably very proud of this, and so the articles are turning up all over the Sun in these articles with all this. But the point is that they released it. It's just like when John Greenwald put in his request under the Presidential Records Act, which allows you to put in a request after 5 years. All right. And then between 5 and 12 years, the president. The administration you're referring to, that president, I think has some influence about what goes out, but after 12 years, none. But nevertheless, he put in that request, and in about 30 days, he got back a statement from the archives, the Presidential Records Archives. Yeah, we've got, based on your search criteria, we have 3,000 pages of written documents relating to UAP and the other search terms, as well as 16,000 digital documents comprising several 100,000 pages.
Wow.
Now, let's think about that. All right. There was a time, and I still think it's the case, you could file all the friggin' Presidential Records Acts you want, requests you wanted, FOI requests you wanted. And if the MOD or the CIA or any of these agencies didn't want you to have it, you didn't get it. You didn't get it. You weren't going to get it. Sometimes they might stall, right? Make you run through 3, 4, 5 requests and then sue them. Sometimes they just wouldn't tell you. And if they don't tell you, it's like an unacknowledged special access program. If you don't know, if they don't even tell you, or they say they don't have them, or they don't tell you, what are you going to do? I believe that was a standard policy.
Yeah,
and
John Greenwald really knew what names and words, keywords to go after in his FOIA requests.
True, but over the decades, there have been people just very sharp. They didn't build the black vault, but Grant Cameron and Larry Bryan and Peter Gersten and so many others, they were pros at this, and they submitted. And let me tell you, if the government didn't want you to have it, you didn't get it. You could sue them until hell froze over. What's changed since 2017, not surprisingly, is like you're getting it, right? And when I say getting it, here's the deal. Again, if you look at this all strategically, meaning everything that the Presidential Archives does, the any agency does, the Freedom of Information people do, the MOD, the Air Force, any of these entities do, if you look at it as part of a strategic process, it makes sense and it's important. And so by telling John and some other people, and the numbers vary because the search terms vary. Oh yeah, we got 3,000 pages of documents from the Presidential Archives of Obama, and 16,000 digital documents, 200,000 pages, but it's going to take, based upon the way this process is done, up to 16 years to get them. Okay, so people are going, well, what good is that? Okay. No, it's very good. Why? Because it can take up to 16 years, but a sitting president can get them anytime he wants. Okay? He can declassify, or she can declassify anytime they want, and suddenly, got to give them to you. And so what have they done? They have put all the journalists and the MOD and the politicians on notice, from the Obama administration, apparently a hell of a lot was going on in there regarding UAP, ET, or whatever, because that's a lot of documents, guy. But it gets better than this, right? And here again is where I'm going to toot my horn, all right? Remember I talked about the the political initiative to get the ET issue as deep into the Clinton campaign as possible.
Mm-hmm.
That started in very late 2014 and in early 2015. And it lasted through the entire campaign, generated about 400 articles and 11 instances where they directly spoke. Either she or Podesta or Obama or her husband, President Clinton, spoke to the issue. Okay? Guess what? That was all during the last 2 years of the Obama campaign, the Obama presidency. And so while all of those articles are turning up in here and she's saying this and she's saying that, he's the president. You think there wasn't internal discussions about that? You think there wasn't some dialogue back and forth or emails being exchanged or whatever the hell about, did you see that article?
We know that there were such emails because of unintentional disclosures by people like Edward Snowden.
Yeah, but that was Assange. Snowden's documents were the NSA. That's right. So yeah, but that wasn't the presidential documents. That was Podesta's files, which don't come under the presidential documents. And so I'm talking about the presidential documents that they come under the Presidential Records Act. So apparently, one hell of a lot of communication was going on. Can't imagine what they were saying, but it gets better, because in the third year of Obama's second term, this is 2015. Okay. If I got that right now. Yeah, 2015. No, I'm sorry. Yeah, 2015. For some reason, President Obama decides to hire John Podesta as a White House advisor and brings him into the White House. John Podesta was at that point the CEO of the Center for American Progress, which he founded back in 2012. All right.
And that
Big
was
deal.
when he said,
right.
Frankly, we should release these files because it's the law.
People can handle the truth, have a right to know, and it's the law. That was part of launching the Coalition of Freedom of Information Act. And then shortly after that, about 3 weeks, he announced, I got $20 million and we're launching a major progressive think tank. Okay. So he's running that show. It's a big deal. And then all of a sudden he has to give that up, turn over that job, and go work for Obama as a presidential advisor. Now, he was there for a year. So the whole time that Clinton is getting all these articles about her in the press and certain things are being said. Hang on a second. I want to make sure I've got this right. During that period, he's working for the president as advisor. And why is that important? Because anything that John Podesta and President Obama may have discussed or exchanged any communications, written or electronic, regarding their thoughts about her campaign and those articles and everything else comes under the Presidential Records Act. And I am telling you, I am 99.999% confident that there was extensive discussions between John Podesta and President Obama about not only Secretary Clinton's prospects to be president or campaign to be president, but all of the ET stuff that was emerging, as well as the Rockefeller Initiative, everything else. And when that comes out, the historians are going to have a field day. And so, again, there are plenty of people in the know about this. And so what do they know? They know that eventually, maybe 16 years, maybe 12 years, or maybe next year, depending upon what President Biden chooses to do, that massive correspondence will be suddenly dumped out, right? And so if you're going to take the position, look, I'm not helping this process. I don't want disclosure. I'm not doing anything. Yeah, screw them all, right? Screw those witnesses. I don't give a damn, right? I'm going to hold the line. You are at great risk to being literally under an avalanche of stuff from history that is just going to make you look not so good. In other words, whatever your legacy is, your political legacy, your agency legacy, whatever how important you were, if you got to understand, there is more than one giant anvil out there on a string, and anytime somebody can cut that string, and it's going to come down and flatten you like a pancake. And so the effect of these releases, even though they are safe on the surface, meaning 16 years, nothing to worry about. Oh, no. All of this, the release of the classified report that John Greenwald requested, the classified report given to Congress in March of 2021. They didn't have to give that to him. They could have stalled that out for years. They sent it to him, right? Which is a big deal. A lot of people are upset. Was they redacted stuff in it? You see how awful it is? You go, please, people. It was a classified report to the Congress, meaning there were parts of it that were classified. A report is classified if any parts of it are classified. Then the report's classified. Okay. It doesn't mean
the names that are redacted, a lot of people don't understand, are to preserve the anonymity of the people that are, in there.
Well, there are a lot of reasons. There's a whole lot of reasons something is classified. Okay. The point is, it's
the redaction specifically.
Yeah, but you're getting ahead of me. See, the Congress got the full report,
right,
which was classified because there's classified material in it. Okay. And that doesn't mean that every A, N, and B in there is classified. It doesn't mean everything. It just means there's enough. It's a classified report. And so when he requests that report, they give it to him. But naturally, they redacted all of the classified stuff in there that had to remain classified, that made the classified report what it was in the first place. There's nothing wrong with that. That is exactly what they're going to do. Okay? And so what's more important is not that there were some things redacted, but that they gave it to him at all. Because it, again, shows cooperation between the Congress, the government, and the public's growing interest and demand that this issue be resolved. Okay? It also put to bed how long the report was. It was 17 pages, apparently, unless that is a summary of a much larger report. Don't know. Or there's another report they're not saying. It was 7, but believe me, 17 pages plus any photos and, of course, the briefings they got is a lot. More than enough to light a fire under any of the 40, 50 members of Congress that got this briefing. So again, when you look at this thing strategically, like I do, because that's what I do, my job is to strategically examine and strategically advance the disclosure process within the resources and powers that I have, it makes a lot of sense. And it continues to point to the fact that disclosure process is now locked in, right? It's on the rails, and it's either moving forward or it's taking a little rest stop for people to get off the train and take a leak or something, right? It's never going to back up. That train is never backing up again. It's only going forward. You can't put
the toothpaste back into the tube.
Exactly.
And speaking of putting toothpaste back in the tube, I would like to welcome Anti-Derivative Jill.
Hello.
Hello, Jill.
Good evening.
Anti-derivative. That's an interesting. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Gotcha.
Anti-derivative.
Yeah, I used to be a mathematics tutor.
Okay. No problem.
Yeah, it's a math thing. So, Jill, do we have a wheel so that we can offer a lucky winner either an Into the Fringe T-shirt in their choice of black or white?
It's a lot of T-shirts.
The new Cardinal unboxing T-shirt.
Yeah,
hey, that's some serious graphics. I mean, you're not giving a cheap graphic T-shirt. I mean, there's a lot of stuff on that shirt.
I'd like to mention that this is made by our good friend Fet for Hire, and he does very, very good work. So the winner will have their choice between the two of those. Let's go ahead and pull up the wheel, and we see all the folks that are on there.
Okay, I got one more contestant in, so I have to update the wheel.
Sure.
If since we do have that
we get
opportunity
a little inside
to do that.
Baseball as to how this all works. Because Steve, I can't do it myself. That's why I have mods do it for me.
You have staff. Good for you.
Yeah. And they have staff T-shirts.
Good. This is good.
But only they can have staff T-shirts.
All right. The new wheel is ready to go.
The new wheel is ready to... Okay. So let's go ahead and click that wheel. Oh, always makes me nauseous to see my head.
Some serious advanced CGI here.
Yeah.
Don McDouglas. Congratulations.
Congratulations, Don.
Congrats.
So, as per usual, I'll need Don McDouglas to get in touch with me or one of the mods. And now it says Michelle Burrito.
Oh, I removed him from the list.
Oh, yeah. We're just giving away one shirt, the winner's choice, Don's choice of either the Into the Fringe t-shirt or the unboxing t-shirt. So, again, congratulations, Don. That's pretty funny. And you can get a hold of me at the email address on the channel page, the Cardinal Sin channel page, or get in touch with one of the mods, and make sure you let me know your size and which shirt you would like and what color, and we'll get that out to you. Jill, I do want to thank you for helping me with the spinner wheel. And I see that Gap Stargate is lurking.
You're welcome.
Hopefully...
Can I ask you a question, Jill?
Oh, sure. Go ahead.
Are you a mathophile?
I do love mathematics. I don't know if I'm qualified to be a mathophile, but I do love to watch videos about it. Mm-hmm.
One of my close friends has a son-in-law who has a website called, I think it's either 2 brown, 3 blue, 2 brown, or 2 blue, 3 brown. Right? It's a YouTube site. He's got 5 million followers. It's an absolute extraordinary site. He basically puts up videos about videos about math with lots of graphics, and he just shows math. He makes it accessible to everybody, and he is incredibly good at it, which is why he has 5 million followers. So if you want to have a lot of fun, just do a Google either 2 brown, 3 blue, or 3 blue, 2 brown. And you can find it. And Grant is the guy that's running that site.
Yes, we have another mathematics fan in our mod group called named Darius, and I think he's told me about that.
Cool.
That particular
Darius says
YouTuber.
3 blue, 1 brown.
3 blue. That's it. That's the way. 3 blue, 1 brown.
Yeah, I knew it. He did tell me about it.
And Ari, who is also a math instructor, says 3 brown, 3 blue, 1 brown.
Okay, that sounds right. That's definitely it. I can never remember it, but that's it.
Here's the URL right here. Darius Munchausen has, Steve, the incredible power to read my mind before I've even made a thought and bring it up before I've even spoken about it. It's uncanny. But yes, that's a popular website among people in our chat.
Yeah, and this has also been a fascinating discussion. It made me think about, there's a new Stargate series coming out by Brad Wright, and in that show they're going to be making it different by making the Stargate disclosed to the public. And it'd be interesting to know if he's choosing to do that based on any beliefs he has about reality.
I also have an office in Hollywood now. I'm in Hollywood right now. I can't tell you how many fictional and non-fictional UAP ET stuff is in the works. It's all over the place, right? And again, part of that background radiation, I think I left out the entertainment media. the streaming media. Just go to any of the streaming media and start checking for the sci-fi stuff, and then go to Amazon, start checking for some of the documentaries. It's everywhere. It's embedded. And so the rise of the internet and the rise of social media ultimately was the stake in the heart of the truth embargo, and that they have managed to keep the embargo going all these years. Though, let's face it, Facebook didn't launch until 2003, Twitter 2006, has been a long time, but is impressive and shows how committed some of them were to it. But it's over, all right, folks? I mean, let's just dodge the nuclear war, get the hearings, get the announcement, and then let's all sit down and decide how we would like the post-disclosure world to be. We want to continue as we've been doing, given how well that's going, or do we want to really start changing the equations? And I don't mind I mean all 7.9 billion of us. We're going to hit 8 billion shortly. There's going to be some sort of big party. I don't know. But the point is that that's my job, is to get us to that point.
A great big party to find potable water for all 8 billion people.
Yeah, right. Probably won't be enough champagne to go around. No. That's a whole nother subject. We don't go there. Just that, look, it's not surprising that at the point where human society, and with all of its skills and gifts and tricks and talents and technology, is really starting to reapart where it simply cannot deal with what it's created or what it is. 8 billion strong, right? The ETs have manifested themselves so profoundly for the last 75 years. Because the nuclear issue is not the only major problem we have. And so is this all part of a transitional process in which we will have some assistance in getting to a place where we can deal with this world we've created by making some fine tunes, some big tuning, adjust this, adjust that, make some political decisions? And to what degree and how would the ET reality influence us? What methods of influence would they use? Obviously, I consider turning off our nukes all the time a significant influence, if you just ask me, right? And call me crazy, all right? Being seen so often is a significant influence. Crop circles are significant. I don't know, but I'm just saying. And all of this is damn interesting. Think about it. Think about how exciting this is, how potentially positive it is. And then think of all of the ocean of negative crap we have been swimming in for most of the last 75 years. And recently, my God, it's as thick as molasses. Man, who doesn't want to change this? Who wants to continue in this negative swamp we're in, as opposed to taking a step into the future? I mean, I don't know why it's such a hard sell, but I do think more and more people are getting it.
Yeah, and I personally think, and this is just my opinion, Steve, but I personally think that the American people can take it, that we can handle the truth.
God, yes. American people will be just, you know the stuff that we've had to put up with? You know the stuff that we've had to take over the last 75 years? Okay, right. Look, I mean, we haven't handled the pandemic that well, but we've handled it, right? We've taken some hits, but it's a pretty awful thing. Yeah. The idea that the disclosure of the extraterrestrial presence is even remotely in the ballpark of upsetting as a 2.5-year massive pandemic that's killed 30 million people, probably will kill another 20 more. And the idea, we can take the pandemic. We can't handle knowing that the ETs are here. I mean, come on, give me a break. It's ridiculous. It is one of the big lies. One of the things that has emerged of late is a much broader public understanding of what the big lie is. The big lie is a key component of propaganda, well covered by the major books on the subject. 1984, Brave New World, you name it. The big lie, it's a non-trivial thing. And we know about these big lies, and we know why they're important. The big lie is not just any lie. It is a lie so big that its validity is virtually emerges out of its bigness, okay? Well, one of the top 5 big lies of the last 75 years that has had enormous impact is extraterrestrials. I have no idea what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big lie, and it's worthy of being in the same room as a lot of other big lies that we've been hearing about lately. All of these big lies need to be cured, ended. They need to be like putting a glass over a cockroach. Just, the glass of truth, boom, right over the damn thing. And then, I don't know, take it out in space and shoot it into the sun. Point is that we need to end all of these big lies. We don't have the luxury of having them anymore. The world's too dangerous. And so that's a kind of way of phrasing the reform process post-disclosure, which I'm hoping we get to soon. But yeah, let's don't forget that big lie as we listen to our journalists tell us about these other big lies, which are pretty important. But I've never once heard a mainstream journalist, and I feel good about this, either in print in an article or in media, refer to the disclosure, the truth embargo as a big lie. Mm-hmm. Never heard it. So we need to get them to there. That's another project for me. I'm going to work on that.
Yeah. And I have put into the chat, Steve, the email address so that people can get in touch with you.
Thank you, sir.
If they'd like to donate. You mentioned that you can let folks know if they get in touch with you, so they can do that easy. There.
The donation link is down. I could put it back up. Let me think about it, but I don't know. I may put it back up. I'm not sure, but they can certainly contact me if they want to make what would be a pretty timely contribution. Right now, I'm trying to bridge from the whole 2-year pandemic situation to a place where both myself and PRG can start having significant influence again. Fortunately, plenty of other people have taken up the slack. There's a lot of stuff happening. I'm not the only UFO lobbyist anymore, or UAP lobbyist anymore. I can tell you that, and that's good. And there's other organizations and stuff happening. So God bless them, and welcome to the party.
Absolutely, and that's where we have to wrap it up. I really feel, Steve, like we've just, like last time you were on, we've just barely nicked the surface, and we could probably go for hours, but 2 hours is pretty much enough into the fringe for anybody.
Oh, one last thing before I know you're about to close. Everybody saw the email address there, and it's up on your site. Mm-hmm. Not the email address, the domain address. The website. I can never offer this enough. Go to that website, go up the top, slide over to resources, click on that, go down the menu. Oh, do it for me. Hey, yeah, cool. Click on resources right up there. Slide on down to print media archive. Way down at the bottom, click on that. Up comes the flash page for it. Okay. Slide on down and you'll see, just slide on down. You see that PRG media archive, click on that link. Okay. Right. What you find here is over 13,000 linked articles specifically addressing, in the mainstream media, UAP, ET, exopolitical issues. Mm-hmm. All of the articles that relate to the disclosure process government-wise since 2017 and the New York Times articles are highlighted in red. They're earmarked in red. There are probably 1,400 of those.
Wow.
This is a resource that I've been building since 2006 for journalists, for politicians. There's still plenty of people that don't know about it. You go to this resource and you go back a certain period and start reading forward, you will know in a very short amount of time more about this process than the vast majority of people in the world. Just by reading the mainstream, not the oddball or odd fringe websites or whatever, small stuff, not that they're bad, they're fine. No, mainstream publications, right? English language, pretty much, few foreign. I can't even begin to cover the foreign publications, probably another 20, 30,000 of those. but it gives you an idea of how much has been covered, how much has been written. And you can read these and go, my God, given all of this coverage and all these articles, why are we still waiting for disclosure? The reason is this. The journalists in this country, one way or another, the editors, the publishers, the reporters, made an institutionalized decision a long time ago. We're not bad people. We're journalists. We're going to write about this. We're going to write about this event and that book and this action by the government, whatever. We're going to write about it. We'll report it. But we are not going to investigate it. We're not going to send out or put $1 million into a team of people from the New York Times going in to find out the background information of some significant thing that's happened to the DOD or the nuclear weapons tampering people. We're not going to go through any agency's trash. We're not going to try to find an inside source to meet in an underground garage in Roseland, Virginia. We're not going to go investigative journalists on this because they know if they did, there would be consequences of one type or another. Just consequences. And they made a decision, no, we'll write it up, we'll do the reporting, and we'll leave the investigative journalism to those that don't have the risk that we have legally and so forth. And in terms of conducting our businesses, getting access to the government, the people that don't have those risks, let them go out and go through the trash cans. This is the deal that they made either implicitly or explicitly a long time ago. And so, and a perfect example of this, and this is not a criticism, the New York Times published 2 extraordinary articles in their print edition on October 16, and then the web edition the next day, October 17, 2016, which pointed to a lot of stuff, right? I mean, clearly, anybody that read those articles knew, well, there's a lot more here. Has the New York Times done an investigatory piece since in 5 years? No. Has it written a bunch of articles? Yes, it has. It's written articles about something that happened. Documents were released. This turned up, that turned up. But have they done a deep investigatory piece on this? No, they haven't. In other words, they said, look, we gave you some pretty good articles. We've done a lot of coverage since. That's as far as we're going to go. Same for the Washington Post. We're not going to go Woodward and Bernstein on this. We still feel that is not in our best interest. Okay? And I get it. I don't berate them over that. I talk about it. I mention it. But again, those papers are covering untold numbers of issues. They have responsibilities with respect to the situation in Europe and the pandemic and anything else you want to put up. What they do and how they do it is going to affect policies and everything else. And so they're just one more boat on this massive tide of history heading toward the shore, deciding how they're going to float that boat. And so I have to respect that, and I do respect it. But I assure you, when the cover comes off the truth embargo, when that confirmation happens, let me tell you, they will be unleashed. They will be unleashed. And there's going to, the race for investigatory Pulitzer Prizes will be on. And everybody in the government is going to be, oh my God, everybody's going to be wanting to meet me in a garage in Roseland. And it will be fun, and I'm looking forward to it. Thank you.
Well, it's been a gas having you, and I just wanted to mention that next Wednesday, our guest will be Walter Bosley, so please don't miss that. And again, thank you very much, Steve.
You're welcome.
It's been a great show. I hope that we can entice you back soon because there's so much to talk about, and like I said, we've just skimmed the surface, I think.
No fear, brother. I'm eminently enticable.
All right. Glad to hear it.
All right.
Well, for Stephen Bassett and Anti-Derivative Jill, it's Cardinal Sin out.